The morning of January 28th, 1986, was supposed to mark another proud chapter in the history of American space exploration. Long before liftoff, millions of people across the United States gathered around their television sets, eager to witness a mission unlike any before it. School children watched from their classrooms, families tuned in from their living rooms, and thousands of spectators stood outside Kennedy Space Center, all waiting to see Space Shuttle Challenger carry the first school teacher into space. As the countdown reached 0, the shuttle lifted gracefully into the clear Florida sky, leaving behind a brilliant trail of fire and smoke. For just over a minute, everything appeared to be unfolding exactly as planned. Then, only 73 seconds after launch, Challenger suddenly disappeared inside a massive cloud of flames, leaving millions of stunned viewers struggling to understand what they had just witnessed. The disaster unfolded live before the eyes of the world, raising one haunting question that would forever change the future of space exploration. How could one of NASA's most trusted spacecraft be destroyed less than 2 minutes after leaving the ground? The Challenger mission, officially designated STS-51-L, carried 7 crew members whose journey represented far more than another routine spaceflight. Among them was Krista McAuliffe, a high school teacher from New Hampshire who had been selected from thousands of applicants to become the first ordinary citizen to travel into space. Her presence transformed the mission into a national event, inspiring millions of students to follow the launch live from their classrooms. NASA hoped the flight would demonstrate that space travel was becoming increasingly reliable and accessible, symbolizing a future in which ordinary people could one day venture beyond Earth. Behind the excitement, however, the mission had already experienced numerous delays caused by technical issues, scheduling conflicts, and unfavorable weather. Each postponement placed additional pressure on NASA to keep the program on schedule. By the evening of January 27th, forecasters predicted that overnight temperatures would fall well below freezing, creating conditions that engineers rarely encountered at Kennedy Space Center. As dawn approached, ice-coated sections of the launch pad, the external fuel tank, and nearby support structures. While the frozen surfaces were visible to everyone, another danger remained hidden deep inside the shuttle's solid rocket boosters. Each booster was built from several steel segments connected by joints sealed with large rubber O-rings. These seemingly simple components played a critical role in the shuttle's safety. During ignition, the boosters generated enormous pressure and temperatures reaching thousands of degrees. The O-rings were designed to expand instantly, sealing the joints and preventing superheated gases from escaping. Engineers at Morton Thiokol, the company responsible for manufacturing the boosters, had spent years studying the behavior of these seals. Their data showed that as temperatures dropped, the rubber became less flexible and required more time to respond. In extremely cold conditions, the seals might fail to close quickly enough, allowing dangerous gases to leak through the joints during the first moments of flight. The evening before launch, NASA managers and Morton Thiokol engineers participated in a lengthy teleconference to discuss these concerns. Several engineers strongly recommended postponing the mission until the weather became warmer. They presented evidence from previous flights, pointing out that the O-rings had already shown signs of erosion even under significantly higher temperatures. Launching in the coldest conditions ever experienced by the shuttle program, they argued, introduced an unnecessary and unpredictable risk. The discussion grew increasingly tense as NASA managers questioned whether the available data conclusively proved that the launch would be unsafe. As the hours passed, management pressure mounted. Challenger had already been delayed several times, and the mission was attracting enormous public attention because of Krista McAuliffe's participation. Eventually, Morton Thiokol's senior management reversed its engineers' recommendation and approved the launch, despite the unresolved safety concerns. On the morning of January 28th, engineers conducted final inspections while ice teams assessed the launch pad. Although much of the visible ice had begun melting under the morning sun, NASA concluded that conditions were acceptable for liftoff. At 11:38 a.m. Eastern Time, Challenger's 3 main engines ignited, followed seconds later by the twin solid rocket boosters. The shuttle rose smoothly from Launch Complex 39B, climbing into a cloudless blue sky as spectators cheered and television cameras broadcast the historic moment across the country. For the first several seconds, the ascent appeared flawless. Yet hidden from view, the freezing temperatures had already compromised one of the primary O-rings inside the right solid rocket booster. Instead of sealing immediately, the hardened rubber allowed a narrow stream of superheated combustion gases to escape through the joint. For a brief period, particles produced by the burning solid fuel partially blocked the opening, temporarily masking the failure. From the outside, Challenger continued its climb without any visible sign that a catastrophic sequence of events had already begun. As the shuttle accelerated higher into the atmosphere, it encountered the intense aerodynamic forces known as max Q, the point during ascent when stress on the vehicle reached its maximum. Once Challenger safely passed through this critical phase, Mission Control instructed Commander Francis Scobie to throttle the engines back up to full power. Scobie calmly acknowledged the transmission, and the shuttle continued accelerating toward orbit. Inside the cockpit, the crew had no indication that danger was only seconds away. Exactly 73 seconds after liftoff, the temporary seal inside the damaged booster joint failed completely. A powerful jet of flame burst through the opening and struck the side of the external fuel tank. The intense heat rapidly weakened the tank's structure, allowing liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen to escape. Within moments, the two propellants mixed violently, causing the shuttle's structural integrity to collapse under tremendous aerodynamic forces. To millions watching on television, it appeared that Challenger had exploded in a massive fireball. In reality, the orbiter itself did not detonate. Instead, the failure of the external fuel tank caused the entire launch vehicle to break apart at nearly twice the speed of sound. The two solid rocket boosters separated from the disintegrating shuttle and continued flying uncontrollably until they were destroyed by range safety officers seconds later. Inside Mission Control, flight controllers stared silently at their displays as telemetry data disappeared without warning. Conversations stopped almost instantly. Engineers searched desperately for any sign that communication with the spacecraft could be restored, but the evidence quickly revealed that something catastrophic had occurred. Outside, spectators stood frozen beneath the clear Florida sky as the shuttle's white exhaust trail split into multiple twisting streams. Across America, teachers, students, and families watched in disbelief, struggling to comprehend the heartbreaking scene unfolding live before their eyes. Within minutes, rescue and recovery operations were launched across the Atlantic Ocean, marking the beginning of one of the most extensive investigations in the history of human spaceflight. The investigation that followed the Challenger disaster lasted for months and uncovered a truth that was as devastating as the accident itself. Investigators concluded that the tragedy had not been caused by an unpredictable mechanical failure or an unforeseeable event. Instead, it resulted from a combination of known technical risks, management pressure, flawed decision-making, and communication failures. The Rogers Commission determined that the primary cause of the accident was the failure of the rubber O-rings in the right solid rocket booster, which had become too stiff to seal properly in the unusually cold temperatures on the morning of the launch. Engineers had repeatedly warned that the seals might not perform safely under such conditions. But those warnings were ultimately overshadowed by schedule demands and an organizational culture that had gradually become comfortable accepting risks that should never have been considered routine. The findings forced NASA to confront problems that extended far beyond a single faulty component. The investigation revealed weaknesses in the agency's decision-making process, where critical engineering concerns were not always given the attention they deserved. Communication between technical experts and senior managers had broken down, allowing uncertainty to be interpreted as acceptable risk rather than a reason to delay the mission. In response, NASA undertook one of the most significant safety reforms in its history. The solid rocket boosters were completely redesigned, launch procedures became far more rigorous, and engineers were given greater authority to halt a mission whenever serious safety concerns arose. The agency also introduced organizational changes intended to ensure that technical evidence would always take priority over schedule pressures or public expectations. More than 3 decades later, the Challenger disaster remains one of the defining moments in the history of space exploration. The loss of 7 courageous crew members profoundly changed the way human spaceflight is planned, evaluated, and executed. Every mission launched since then has benefited from the painful lessons learned on that cold January morning in 1986. The tragedy serves as a lasting reminder that even the most advanced technology can never eliminate the consequences of human decisions. In exploration, as in every field where lives depend on precision and trust, true safety is built through careful engineering, open communication, and the courage to stop when something does not feel right. Challenger's legacy is therefore measured not only by the mission that was lost, but by the countless lives that have been protected because its lessons were never forgotten.